Greetings, salutations, generic ad-lib pleasantries. Yes, it's me, your host, the humble Gazbotian, and it's 100 days of Commokikins. And today's day 58. That's right, day 58. And what does that mean? That means we are more than halfway done, cruising on the downslope to get to the end of this thing. And while my enthusiasm for getting towards the end of this video series is high, not that I don't enjoy this, but it is a labor each to have to do it every single day. My enthusiasm for the project is still high, but my enthusiasm for the amount of work I will have done at the end of the 100 days is not as high as it once was. It seems to fluctuate almost day to day depending on how good of a day I had in general, but also as far as working on the Horror A4. So today I had a caricature job during the week, which is always unusual. It was a corporate gig. It's a local company that I had done, I don't know, 6 months ago, and basically they had me come in to do caricatures of all of these people that got promotions in the last year. So I went and did that again today. It was only like an hour and a half. I have to go back again tomorrow, I think do 2.5 hours at their other location. But even though it's only an hour and a half, it was like a half hour each way and a half hour waiting, so it ends up being like a 4-hour thing, chunk of my day. So that was a big chunk of my day. Then I also worked on that coloring page, which is taking me way longer than I thought it would, mostly because of the whole coloring pencils thing. So in addition to just flatting it and doing the colors, I'm trying to figure out the best way to make the pencils look right, and I was looking up tutorials, but most of the tutorials I find about how to color pencils focus on turning those pencils into inks, which would be ideal for what I'm doing, except they all seem very labor intensive, and even the tutorials are like 20 minutes long, 30 minutes long, and I'm trying to avoid that because that isn't something I've been paid for. Or the alternative version of like how to digitally paint using pencils as like your guide. And that is more interesting, I guess, but that's not what I'm trying to do at all. I really am just trying to do comic book coloring using these pencils he gave me. And what I ended up doing is kind of sort of doing the turning it into ink style thing, but even that required some like freehand cleanup of like, we'll erase this spot and mask that out and whatever. So I kind of just adjusted some level channels and turned it to multiply blending mode and doubled it a few times, and you know, we'll see. Maybe they won't like what I did and I'll just do this one page, get paid for it, and we'll be done. But if they're okay with that, that didn't take me too long to do, and I'd be okay doing that for 7 more pages. Or if they want me to do like a legit cleanup, turn it into looking as much inks like I can, I would, but then I have to have more money because it's not a quick job apparently, at least not for me, unless there's some shortcut that I haven't been able to find. But anyway, I worked on that a bunch today. I'm more than halfway done with it now. But it did take a few hours of research and just straight up work. Meanwhile, getting back to the horror, there's commotion in my house. Getting back to the horror, I didn't have a great day. I put in about 45 minutes. It wasn't as bad as yesterday, where I kind of felt like I didn't do anything. I'm still working on page 5. I did a process video, which I'll put up in a second. I'm a little bit more positive, but it's, again, I did like 45 minutes, and I sort of got not super tight roughs of 2 panels that theoretically I'd already drawn twice before. And I think part of the issue with this whole page is like slowing me down, and that's also why I feel like, oh, I'm never gonna get done if I've been spending days on this one page. But I've been doing short days, like half hour instead of 2 hours, and you know, hopefully the next page I won't be as hung up on as this one. And I think one of the things that's messing me up is that the layout, the thumbnails were not solid. They weren't like really a good flow. They didn't quite tell the story perfectly. And yet I went and did cleanup on the first couple panels and one of the lower panels, so that then I'm reluctant to want to change things in the panels I've already like kind of cleaned up, and that's always a trap you could fall into. So I just gotta be cognizant that going forward, when I do thumbnails, I make sure I kind of, even if they're stick figures, I'm happy with the layout and the clarity of storytelling. And as I go to do the layout roughs, the full-size layout roughs, I should say, which is what I've been doing, of my thumbnails that I've already done, before I start the page, I should just quickly make sure I'm okay with the thumbnail. Maybe redo the thumbnail of that page only at that time. But I'm getting through it. I flip-flop it around and whatever. You know, I keep talking about it. I'm going to put it up. It's not the most exciting process video, and the end product isn't that interesting looking, but I feel it's good to show some of my, I won't call it a failure, my mediocre meanderings, my struggles, if you will, rather than just my successes. That like, look at this, a half hour, boom, it looks great, right? You know, so this is, you know, it's reality. And maybe one day I won't have that, but I'd like to think even the best artists have times when they are not getting things quite right and a little bit frustrated. But again, I didn't feel as frustrated today as I did yesterday. I felt more positive despite what... I keep saying I'm going to show you the process, and now I will!
All right, so wading back into the quagmire that is the roughs of page 5. As you can see, this is a little bit more finished than the last one I showed you. This is what I did yesterday, where I kind of redrew them. Decided to focus on panel 3. Decided to split panel 3 into 2 panels, and then flip them, consulting the script to see what balloons went where. Because part of the problem was when I sort of did my rough layout, but I did my thumbnail, then I did my roughs, and I did the balloon placement to move the conversation and the eye around the page, and I was pretty happy with it. So now I'm also having to redo the balloon placement, which is a lesson to me, once again, for not having the thumbnails set or the rough set before I started mucking around with the balloons too much, or captions, anywhere text is. So here I am, once again, like I said, trying to split it into 2, and what's happening is I need to show Boots stealing a candy bar. And so originally I had sort of the troops in the background still arresting this guy, arguing with people, and she swipes candy bar in the foreground. But I was realizing it was hard to do that because the angle I would need, or the distance from the camera, is very, very similar to the second shot, which I already did, where she first stumbles into the scene and sees what's going on. And so when I pulled back far enough to show a bit more of the scene to make it different, I couldn't show the detail of her. So I figured I'd do like a bit of an establishing shot and then do a close-up of her grabbing the candy bar. So splitting one panel into 2, which is fine because the bottom right is a big open panel anyway, so it's okay if I don't need 2 big open panels. And here I am placing her walking away from the scene, and I was checking proportion for perspective. I made arbitrary green horizon line there for the perspective, and sort of measured her head against how far below the horizon line versus the soldiers, and made it a little bit lower since she's a little bit shorter. And right here, because I'm such a weirdo, I kept having a brain fart about being under the horizon line if I would see the top or bottom of her shapes, whatever they may be. Like, if I think of legs as cylinders and that sort of thing. So I did that quick little shorthand up there just to remind myself how perspective works. And then, yeah, I don't know why I gave her more detail than everything else. Probably just because she's my main character in these scenes. Put a little shading on this. Yeah, this is more or less what the third panel is going to be like, but I changed it to the fourth, where she's then walking away, and the shadows to indicate she's leaving this lit area and heading into an alley. And the next scene or panel will be her walking down the alley. So I wanted to establish that. So now that I flip these panels, the panel 3 is going to be her stealing the candy bar. And so I had to figure out a way to do that. One thing I did in some of the earlier roughs yesterday, which I liked, it wasn't working, but the idea of her kind of yawning, a fake yawn, and grabbing the candy bar sort of behind her back. And so I decided to go with that. Yeah, so you see she's like, "Murr," and then, hey, meanwhile, I'm going to grab something. Dink. I liked having her little pinky out because it's like, she's dainty. She's a dainty thief. But she's also overacting the yawn. But no one's really paying attention anyway, so it's almost unnecessary that she does the distraction. I just pulled that up for reference for her outfit and stuff. But yeah, give her a nice big exaggerated pose. She's yawning, and that's just putting in the framework of the booth she's swiping from. And she's yawning. There's her hair. Oh, that's right. I wanted exaggerated even more. Yawn. I'm so tired of not having this free candy bar that I didn't pay for. Yeah, so the way I solved this problem, I don't know if it's ideal. There might be a better way out there, but I'm calling it done for this phase at least. When I go back in for the final art and stuff, I might change it again, but it's kind of like the page before. I had a hard time with that top panel, and at some point I got it better into a place where I felt good about it, and that's kind of where I feel now with these two, where it could probably be done better. They're probably not perfect, but they're certainly better than where I was yesterday, and I feel good enough to move on. And I feel like that's what I've been trying to learn a lot, is being good enough to move on without it sounding like being lazy or, just like good enough has a negative connotation to it. And it's not a lack of interest or care or a lack of willing to do hard work, but more a cognizance that if I continue to try to make it as good as it can be or as good as I want it to be, I will spend months on one panel. So good enough for me means good enough that I won't hate it and won't be embarrassed to show it. And in this case, I still might work on it more, but it's good enough for this phase. And you can see when I started placing the word bubbles, I realized I was going to get into trouble with placement because it was going to be covering her face, and I put the yawn there, which wasn't there before, but she needs to be thinking something in the caption. So I got rid of the yawn, moved that down, moved her over to the left, and kind of made it so it would accommodate the bubble and stuff, and then mucked around with that one. And this is what I have.
There! You saw the process. Are you happy? Anyway, I'm just going to let it be that for today. Tomorrow, hopefully, I say hopefully I get some more work done, but I probably won't because I have more time out of the house, out of the studio tomorrow. We'll see what happens. I'll definitely do something. At least 30. Try to do 2 hours. Super unlikely I'm going to do more than 2 hours, but we're going to call that a day, and the day we're going to call it is 4 times 2. 5 plus 5 plus 58. Well, that means we've got 42 days left. That timing.
Well, hello, Mr.
No, I'm doing a bit. Ash, we're doing. I want some. I want some 42 days left.
All right, you primitive screwheads, listen up.
He's impossible to work with.